of absence to Commissioner Sumput, who is out of town.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Yes, Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy, McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call for a motion and second for approval of the minutes of the regular commission meeting of February 9th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Pam?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy, McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Curtis, if you could please provide your executive director's report, please.
Terrific. Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, guests and port employees. Nice to see everyone this morning. Pam, I don't know if you picked up on this. I know Bob Levy was having trouble with his volume today, so you might do a hand signal from Bob for votes. Let me start by acknowledging, if I can, the port's monthly safety champions. If we could get them, there we go, up on the screen. You'll see another crew of folks from across the port who are really leaning in on safety, watching out for themselves, and also for their coworkers and our passengers and business partners. Really happy to see this bunch of committed safety professionals in our organization. Let me, if I could, turn to Stan, if you would share with us a safety message this morning. Stan?
Sure. Thanks, Curtis. This Friday marks the 2-year anniversary of the port's work from home rule to prevent the spread of COVID-19 amongst employees. Since that time, many essential workers have returned to their work sites to support the port's mission and construction projects while using the evolving COVID-19 safety protocols. Still others continue to work safely from their homes. We continue to learn and adapt to the latest safety and health guidance provided by authorities having jurisdiction and are looking forward to the face covering mandate being lifted on March 12th. The port will continue to work with our federal partners to maintain compliance with their masking rules in areas of their jurisdiction. On another note, I am happy to announce that the Port of Portland will be supporting the 6th annual National Ladder Safety Month currently taking place. Every year, more than 300 people die in ladder-related accidents and thousands suffer disabling injuries. Without better safety education, inspections, training, and continuous innovation in product design, we will continue to see far too many fatalities. The port recently experienced a severe injury after an employee fell from a mobile staircase type of ladder. National Ladder Safety Month will heighten awareness, reinforce safety training, and educate both homeowners and working professionals. At the Port of Portland, our employees and construction partners understand the dangers working from ladders present and commonly have a ladders last policy. Most other industry and professional construction companies have significant potential exposure and resources to engineer out ladder use. However, at homes, it is a different situation, and most in this audience know of someone who fell off a ladder and was injured. Ladder Safety Month is the only movement dedicated exclusively to the promotion of ladder safety at home and at work. Help us bring awareness to the importance of the safe use of ladders through resources, training, and a national dialogue. Curtis, that's my safety message today.
Terrific, Stan. Thank you. Very serious topic, but I do note a few puns in there when you're heightening awareness on ladder safety. I just love that stuff. Commissioners, a bittersweet day for me today and for us at the port because this is the last commission meeting for Commissioner McDonald. Pat has been on the commission for 6 years, since February of 2016, and honestly, it's been a remarkable time at the port. A lot of challenges and incredible achievements, and a few of the milestones that we've seen in Pat's tenure is a big push on general fund sustainability and really putting our general fund on stable footing. One, Pat was integral in the selection of a new executive director, something I'm very grateful for. Pat helped us lean in on PDX Workplace Initiative and a big push on PDX Next. I can go on and on, but I will just a little bit more. Opening of a new rental car facility and parking garage, securing air passenger service to London and Mexico City and air cargo service to Asia, new container service at T6, new FedEx and Amazon construction out at Troutdale Reynolds, and really a new significant development at Gresham Vista with spec development and Colas construction, and just a great partner for us on developing our social equity policy and really a new push that you'll actually hear about later in today's commission meeting around shared prosperity. And I just want to say, Commissioner McDonald, we're very grateful for your guidance and engagement, and honestly, your friendship and your kindness, always there with a thoughtful voice and insight for us, and just really have appreciated your service on the port. Madam President, I don't know if you'd rather I keep rolling here, or I've got a little bit more, and I'm happy to stop or roll right through.
Thanks, Curtis. If you could roll through, I'm sure that commissioners want to weigh in, but we'll do that after your report.
Terrific, thank you. We are in the midst, I think, as everyone knows, of a big push on our Mass Timber Economic Development Administration grant. It's due next week. It's the second phase, as you'll recall, of our Build Back Better grant proposal. We're competing for up to $100 million in American Rescue Plan funding to develop and scale mass timber manufacturing in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. We did get $500,000 as the first phase of that process back in December from the federal government to really look at Terminal 2 and plan out how this might work. The vision is really to support Oregon's emerging mass timber industry. We actually were able to show the governor around our construction on the new PDX roof yesterday, and she was just overwhelmed with how the firms from around the state, the small woodlot owners to the millers, to the hands working on the roof, are all connected to Oregon's economy and can really help connect rural and low-income communities to urban markets. We're just really excited about this opportunity. The vision we have for shared prosperity out at Terminal 2 really involves meeting the housing needs of Oregonians, built by rural and urban Oregonians, and with sustainable mass timber grown in the Pacific Northwest. We have a bunch of friends and partners here from Hacienda CDC who are going to be on the agenda later. We're just really looking forward to this partnership and engaging further on Terminal 2. Stan mentioned briefly return to office framework. We are returning at the port over the course of the next couple months. As opposed to a 3-2 hybrid we talked about in the fall. We're really working on a flexible hybrid model, and commissioners, happy to talk more about that if you're interested. But the model we're pursuing is really having teams decide how they work together best and how we as an organization can help support that. So one team might look one way and another team a different way in terms of how frequently they're in the office and on what days. But the idea is to really facilitate inclusive decision-making around returning to office and building community again. It's actually been a change for us, and I'll say, hopefully some learning from me. We had a group of employees who did a lot of work on this over the last 6 months and came to us and to me and said, you didn't get this quite right, and they gave us some really good feedback about how to proceed. So I'm really looking forward to essentially an employee-led model on what this looks like. We should have this flexible hybrid model back, having us back early summer. On mask guidance, just briefly here as I wrap up, the port's going to continue to follow state and health guidance authority on mask requirements, including following the FAA requirement of masking on airport properties. So our non-airport properties after this Saturday will be able to unmask. Obviously, folks are free to mask up if they'd like. But right now, we don't have an exception for the headquarters facility, and we'll just keep everyone posted on that. I know several commissioners have expressed an interest in getting back to in-person commission meetings at headquarters, and we're going to push forward on that as soon as we are able. So that, Madam President, is the end of my comments. Thanks again for the time.
Thanks, Curtis. I look forward to hearing from the Hacienda folks about Terminal 2, but first wanted to reflect on Commissioner McDonald's service. Thank her for the time that she served on the commission. I know that she's been a valuable member of the commission and a valuable colleague to me. I really appreciate how people-centered her outlook has always been, and on behalf of employees and more largely on behalf of the community as we looked at our equity policies and frameworks. So really appreciate her service, and sad to see her leave the commission. Want to give time to other commissioners if you have questions or comments on Curtis's report. I see a hand raised, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, it's Commissioner Alexander.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Madam President, I would join you and Curtis in extending our appreciation to Commissioner McDonald. I didn't realize that she was on the commission about the same amount of time that I was. She must have been a relatively new arrival, but the minute I came in that room, her presence, you would have thought that she had been a part of the body for a much longer time. Being in the room, her comments, her focus, it always took me back to the E.F. Hutton commercial that says, when E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. When Commissioner McDonald speaks, people listen. And we have been enriched by that, and it has been just a privilege and a pleasure to be in the room with you, Commissioner. And we wish you Godspeed, and we will miss you.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander. I will miss all of you. Thank you, Madam President, and especially Executive Director Robin Holt. This has been truly one of the most meaningful and rewarding experiences of my career, and I'm very confident that you are going to continue to do great things, and I look forward to being invited to the big celebration in 2025.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And with that said, I'll call for a motion and second for approval of the Executive Director's report.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further? Okay. Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is the public comment section of our meeting, and I understand we did not receive any written comment. Pam, would you confirm?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our consent items on the agenda and ask if any commissioner wants a presentation on the consent items. I'll read them by title, and please let me know if you'd like a presentation. They are the 2022 Port of Portland Transportation Improvement Plan and Equipment Procurement Contract, Terminal Yard Tractors Marine Division. Okay, not seeing any raised hands for a presentation. I'll call for a motion and second for approval of the consent items.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Pam.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Pippinger will present, I'm sorry, out of order. Keith Levitt will present our first agenda item.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I also just want to say how much I've appreciated working with Commissioner McDonald over the years. Very insightful, very supportive of all of us, and an Oregon State Beaver. So we're going to have to make sure that we replace beaver slot on the commission. So having said that, this is a big moment, as Curtis described. We are right at the finishing line of the grant. We're going to describe a bit of that with you. But even more importantly today, we're entering into a whole new partnership relationship with a lease with Hacienda CDC. We have Hacienda's leadership here, Dr. Ernesto Francisca and Peter Platt, his board chair. They will speak to us after we get through the agenda item. So with us to present the item and to give us an update on how we're doing on the overall grant, Cherie Hilscher, who is our property manager out at Terminal 2. Cherie is I would say one of our all-stars within the organization and was an early adopter of all things shared prosperity, has been doing great work. And I think this is Cherie's first time presenting to the commission, so we can let the initiation begin, but she'll be great. And to kick things off and give an overall update is Margaret Van Vliet, who we have hired on and basically stolen her life for the last 3 months and probably more as a consultant, working pretty much full-time plus to us to help oversee really kind of the executive oversight of all of these moving parts. We won't do enough justice to all that is going on the grant agreement side, but I know Margaret will give a good update, and then we'll kick it over to Cherie for the agenda item. So Margaret, take it away.
Thank you so much, Keith. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Margaret Van Vliet. I am on contract, as Keith says. My consulting firm kind of focuses on strategy, program development, and change management for public agencies, nonprofits, and philanthropy. Most of my career I've spent in the affordable housing world. Ran the state of Oregon's Housing and Community Services Department for a number of years, and I've also worked in local governments and led a couple of different housing authorities, both here in Oregon and in California. So I'm really pleased to be part of this team working on the big agenda at T2 as part of your shared prosperity kind of focus and initiatives. I think we've got a couple of slides that we're going to show. I'm not sure who's controlling the slides. I'm pretty sure I am not. So if we could advance. Okay, there we go. So again, Cherie is going to walk you through the specifics of kind of, I would say, the business arrangements that are before you today with Hacienda. There's two parts to that, a grant agreement and a lease. So that's the basics. Next slide. And so what I'll talk with you about is kind of the larger context about kind of the EDA grant and the overall vision. Next slide. So as you've, I think, been hearing, T2 is really the anchor as part of this larger statewide vision to scale up the use of mass timber technology and the mass timber industry. And to create a campus really at your T2 property that's dedicated to manufacturing, to research and development, and producing actually modular homes out of mass timber, and also creating workforce opportunities through a workforce training center that would be operated by a number of local and regional partners. This is the culmination of a lot of work over the last couple of years and since really the wildfires of 2020. But it's been crystallized because the Economic Development Administration came forward with this Build Back Better Regional Challenge grant opportunity that members of the Oregon Mass Timber Coalition kind of have come together to put together an overarching vision. So there's a lot more we'll share with you another day, but this is just a high level view. This graphic is just a high level view of kind of how we're thinking about the 53 acres at T2 as kind of this overall campus. The centerpiece will be a manufacturing facility, but again, other facilities that are complementary. Next slide. So what I want to kind of share with you is the overview of the kind of what is the EDA, the Economic Development Administration, really asking for in this competition. And again, we're applying on behalf of the coalition for $100 million in these Build Back Better regional challenge funds. Let me mention quickly, the members of the Oregon Mass Timber Coalition are 3 state agencies, 2 universities, and the port. So the 3 state agencies are Business Oregon, Oregon Department of Forestry, and Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. OSU and U of O are teaming up in the Tallwood Design Institute. So they are applying as institutions separately, but also they come together around the Tallwood Design Institute. So that is the coalition. And again, the port is the lead applicant. EDA is looking for transformative change. And really, so to be competitive, we need to really tell a very compelling story about how this opportunity centered in mass timber will be able to transform communities statewide. So the elements of that are really build a sustainable new industry cluster to create quality jobs, and the job categories that are kind of centerpiece here are forestry and new kind of forest health practices, construction, and also manufacturing, specifically advanced manufacturing. We're going to do a lot of work, as you see, at T2, but the idea is to revitalize distressed communities throughout the state. And so we are talking with communities all over the state about kind of their economic development plans. The other big centerpiece, which was, of course, an excellent match with the Port's Shared Prosperity agenda, is to ensure women, people of color, immigrants, people with disabilities gain access to the good jobs and that they stand to benefit. We think we have a really strong story to tell about how we will address climate change and address the really dire shortage of housing, particularly affordable housing. So those are the aspects that just are kind of the overarching vision. Grant application goes in next week. We'll learn in September, if we're successful, and then we'll really be off to the races. So with that context, I'm going to turn it back to Cherie to kind of talk about what we're doing in advance, and even before we get started, even before we know if EDA is going to fund our big effort. Cherie?
Hello. Finally, my picture will match the presenter. Keith, thank you, and Margaret, thank you for teeing this up. We can move on to the next slide. And we're going to go over the legislative funding that happened in December of 2021. The Oregon State Legislature appropriated $5 million in support of a modular housing prototyping project, which will test the viability of the larger T2 EDA concept. The grant agreement with the Oregon Department of Administrative Services has now been signed by DOS, so we recommend proceeding with a lease to Hacienda, who will be executing on the modular prototyping project. The state-funded modular prototyping project and the larger T2 EDA concept are separate and distinct, but the prototype project sends a strong signal to the EDA that the state supports the overall efforts of the Mass Timber Coalition. All right, we can move on to the next slide, please. And then our partner in this, which is one of the most pivotal pivotal pieces is Hacienda CDC. They are a Latino community development corporation that provides affordable housing, homeownership support, economic advancement, and educational opportunities. Moving forward quickly on a prototyping project with Hacienda will be proof of concept that supports the port and the coalition's EDA application. It will also generate housing and inform on the economic and social viability of the product. Those outcomes will be of value regardless of whether or not the port is awarded the Phase 2 EDA funding. With the $5 million grant from the state and Hacienda's strong background in affordable housing, they'll be executing on the design, construction, land acquisition, and placement of the prototypes. And port staff proposed that the port provide Warehouse 204 at Terminal 2 as the location for the facility, in partnership with Hacienda on all of their efforts. All right, next slide, please. The subgrant agreement will lay out that Hacienda will deliver 9 to 12 units on 3 or more parcels throughout Oregon, some directly impacted by wildfires. They will competitively procure design, engineering, and construction contractors. Funds from the state will be expended by June 30th, 2023, and we will jointly report back to the Legislative Assembly on the project. They also are very enthusiastic about the port's contracting targets with small businesses, especially minority and women-owned small businesses, and they expect to exceed our guidelines. All right, next slide. A little bit about T2, my home away from home. I have been the property manager of T2 for 2 years, and I've assisted in developing various interim plans at T2 that would hopefully positively affect the community. But it turns out a former marine cargo facility with a myriad of complicated zoning overlays isn't the easiest place to jumpstart projects. So a project with a larger scope that could work toward economic development and more housing and is supported by the state, as shown by their big investment, seems to be the way to move this forward and bring the facility back to life. All right, that's next slide. That is T2 and Warehouse 204, and then the specifics of the lease. As everyone teed up for me, this is not a traditional business transaction. It's an investment in the future of the coalition and in finding solutions to the shortage of housing in the region. We propose furnishing Warehouse 204 to Hacienda rent-free to ensure as much of the $5 million state grant goes towards developing, building, placing, and allocating housing, as well as developing a workforce training program that could create quality jobs all over the state of Oregon. For Warehouse 204 to be ready for Hacienda's operations, it will require approximately $400,000 of tenant improvements, with a cap up to $500,000 paid for by the port and deliverable by July 1st, 2022. The other specifics of the lease are, the 1-year term and a 1-year option to extend if the project, or almost 1-year option to extend if the project isn't complete yet. And Hacienda will be responsible for property taxes, insurance, general upkeep, and will be responsible for the things we're already taking care of out at T2, the exterior and the system maintenance. And then, like everybody mentioned, we have Hacienda here, and I believe Keith is going to introduce them, but we can go ahead and go to the last slide before they get to tell you about themselves and their organization. The executive director recommendation is approval of the subgrant agreement with Hacienda CDC and approval on the lease of Warehouse 204 with Hacienda CDC. So thank you, everybody. And Keith, I was here one other time. I helped in an annual shared prosperity presentation, so you don't get to haze me this time.
All right, no hazing. Okay. Madam President, shall we invite Hacienda to come up now before there's more questions, or would you like to take questions on the?
I have a few questions on the recommendation, and so maybe we can do that first, and then introduce Hacienda leadership and have the vote, if that's okay. And my questions really are sort of the longer term vision, which I, will ask the questions with hopes that the funding will come through from the federal government. Is the intention that this lease is really short term, and we'll be back at the table to talk about the long term vision with respect to to the lease if the funding comes through, or do we intend that this lease will extend?
Keith, do you want me to take that?
Sure, Margaret, you can take that and I can chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's definitely a short-term lease, and the $5 million grant from the state of Oregon actually has to be expended by June of 23, so the end of the biennium. And our hope is that we get funded, and then we understand what a construction schedule would be, and that will involve tearing down Warehouse 204. And so syncing up the timing, if we get the grant, we'll just have to sort of play it by ear and see how the prototyping is going and whether it's in our mutual interest to extend it, so there are a couple of extension options, but as it stands, it's a 1-year lease with some extension options. Does that help?
It does. Thank you. And Keith, did you want to weigh in, or I see Dan Blofus has his hand raised as well?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that, if we don't get the EDA grant, we still believe this is a compelling vision that is investment worthy. Exactly how that gets structured out into the marketplace is going to be the key kind of question, but we don't see this lease with Hacienda needing to last much more than the short term that you see here, just because it's finite with the dollars that we have available from the state.
Thank you. Dan, did you have something you wanted to add? Blofus?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Commissioner Strader would like to just declare a conflict before any further discussion on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Strader?
Yeah, as an officer of the International Longshore Warehouse Union Local 8, I have an interest in any action that affects the port's terminals. Therefore, I may have a potential conflict of interest, and I will not be participating in the vote nor the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Does anyone have any additional questions with respect to the recommendation before we introduce the Hacienda leadership? Okay, seeing none. Keith?
Great, yeah. With no further ado, we'll just introduce Ernesto and Peter and ask them to maybe introduce themselves and say a bit about this relationship.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ernest Fonseca, and I am the Chief Executive Officer for Hacienda CDC. And I don't know where Peter is, but he was in the call. Peter Platt is my board chair and also a small business owner of Andina Restaurant in Northwest Portland. Well, what can I tell you? We are really excited about this project and about the partnership with the Port of Portland. There is no doubt that we need to create more housing choices and opportunities for all Oregonians. And I do think that it is time, way overdue for us to start working on some serious prototyping and development of new technologies and new type of housing. That is just the bottom line. Whether we do it or somebody else does it, this has to be done relatively soon. It's not just the housing crisis. Of course, this is something that we are definitely need to tackle ASAP. But it is also, the fact that the housing industry and the building industry hasn't evolved, for decades. If you think about, what we're doing a century ago, it's pretty much the same, just a little more refined, today. But these new technologies will allow us to bring more sustainability practices, to utilize and capture more carbon, through these mass timber products and fiber. So this is a super, super exciting opportunity, and I am delighted to be working with the Port of Portland and with all the leadership at the port and the state level. So we're grateful for this opportunity, and I am confident that we're going to make it work.
Great, thank you, Ernesto. And I know Peter is also on.
Yes, thank you, Keith, and Madam President, Commissioners, Executive Director Robin Hold. Thank you for hosting us this morning and for giving us a chance to introduce ourselves. My name is Peter Platt. I'm the board chair at Hacienda CDC. You just heard from Ernesto, our very dynamic and entrepreneurial CEO. I don't know how much you are familiar with Hacienda. We are the largest Latino-led CDC in the state. In fact, we're the largest BIPOC-led CDC, or Community Development Corporation, in the state. We're affordable housing developers. That's our bread and butter. We've been in business for 25 plus years. Started in the Northeast Cully neighborhood, which is obviously a neighbor to the port. And we have now embarked on a process under Ernesto's leadership to expand our geography outside of Portland. So we are working now in communities around the state. We have an active project in Umatilla County, Port of Morrow and Hermiston community, which I understand is Commissioner Levy's home turf. And we have projects already afoot in the Wallowas, and we are working with one of our vendors in this mass timber project, the Ferris Brothers in Sandium County, or Sandium Valley, rather. And we are going to be working with them on an affordable housing project for workforce housing close to their mill. So we are engaged actively in community development. And I think that's the key a point I would like to make to all of you today. We are more than just about building housing. We have developed a reputation for the services that we provide our tenants. That it goes anywhere from after-school programs to educational support to home ownership support to microenterprise development. We really walk the talk when it comes to community building. And I think for that reason, we look forward to working with the port on achieving these larger objectives related to economic development across the state. Housing is, of course, the driver. It's desperately needed, but housing is only one part of community development. And so we are, I think, strategically positioned because of the strength of the relationships we have, not just with the BIPOC-led organizations, but with industries, academic partners, government partners, including yourselves, city officials, et cetera. We're a well-connected, well-resourced organization. This is an excellent and amazing opportunity to put into practice what we've, all the strengths that we've developed as an organization. And we really look forward to working with the port on achieving this first phase and getting out of the gate with a lot of fanfare, making this work for everyone. So thank you again for hosting us this morning.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the strength and the commitment that Hacienda has always shown to the community, and I'm also excited about this opportunity. Want to make sure that we don't have any questions for Mr. Platt or Mr. Fonseca before we move on. And I see Mr. Alexander, Commissioner, please.
Yes, Madam President, I don't have any questions, but I do want to commend both Hacienda and the port for finding this joint path. I think each of the organizations has had sort of a parallel history of achievement and supporting populations, and to have this become a shared objective, I think really begins to speak to the desire to make sure that all we know can be brought to all populations across the state. So Peter and Ernesto, we commend you. We look forward to the partnership and modeling what it is that we want to see, not only for Oregon, but for other communities around the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So I will take a motion and second to approve the Executive Director's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Pam, if you could lead us through the vote, please.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
and O'Halloran.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. We will move on to our next agenda item, and I'll call on Dan Pippinger to introduce it.
Good morning, Commissioners, and Commissioner McDonald. Sad to see you leave. Keith, I think, hit the right tone for it. So thank you for all you've done for the port. Much appreciated. Commissioners, this item is to approve an award for a personal services contract for engineering design work on berth 410 pier replacement project at Terminal 4. The project is really to replace a really aging pier structure, berth 410, over the next 4 years. And historically, this berth, combined with berth 411, is the most utilized and busy berth at the port. It's used in the soda ash export operation by Kinder Morgan, who is our tenant and customer at T4. Here to present the item is Marcel Hermans, Engineering Project Manager. Marcel?
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and good morning, commissioners. Like Dan said, next slide, please. I'm here to request your approval towards a personal services contract for the engineering design and other support services to WSP USA Inc. for the berth 410 pier replacement project at Terminal 4 in the listed amount of just below $1.9 million. Next slide, please. Terminal 4 is the Port of Portland's bulk cargo and automobile terminal, which is located on the Willamette River. At the northern part of T4, which is shown on this slide, Kinder Morgan operates a soda ash export facility using berth 410-411 in slip 3 for vessel berthing. Berth 410 consists of a pier, which is the subject of this project. Next slide, please. The soda ash export facility operated by Kinder Morgan brings in product by rail and both stores it on site and directly loads it onto ships. Berth 410 is the busiest at the Port of Portland with almost 100 vessels a year. It was built in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and is not in great shape anymore or up to current norms of operation. The port has considered either a rehabilitation or a replacement of the berth and selected replacement, but the project will be done so that the terminal facility can generally keep operating during execution of the project. Next slide, please. Thanks. The port has conducted the consultant selection process through a qualification-based process. As part of that process, an RFP, request for proposals, was issued and the port received 5 proposals, which were evaluated based on the criteria shown on this slide. WSP was determined to be the highest ranked proposer, scoring highest or second highest on each of the 5 criteria. Next slide, please. The consultant scope of work for this contract is shown here. Basically starts off with a design concepts analysis, helping the port select the type of pier as a replacement for the current berth. Following that will be the engineering design, which is the typical process of producing specifications, drawings, estimates in several steps. And then supporting that process will be several engineering studies as needed. In addition to that, there will be permitting support for both local, state and federal permits that are needed for this project. And if applicable, also grant application support. Port is not is considering grant applications for this, but no decisions have been made yet. Next slide, please. As far as the schedule, preliminary design on the project was performed starting in August of last year. And upon your approval today, design is anticipated to take place from April of this year through about the middle of 2023. We hope to be back to you to request construction contract approval late 2023. Per our current schedule, construction would take place in 2024 and 2025. Next slide, please. As far as the budget, this contract amount of just about $1.9 million is part of a total project budget of $18.7 million, as shown here. This solicitation itself did not have a specified SBE requirement contract goal, but instead requested proposers to demonstrate how and to what degree they would help the port accomplish the stated port goal. WSP is committing to SBE participation of 25% on this contract. Next slide, please. And with that, we recommend that approval be given to award contract to WSP USA Inc. for the shown amount.
Thank you, Marcel. I guess my first question is, what are we? I guess I'm concerned about safety at the berth. You mentioned that it was in bad shape. We're going to keep operating to a limited degree. Are we comfortable with the safety requirements for people who will be working there?
In the current operations, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the berth is fine to operate, but it's just degrading over time, and it's clearly time to start working on a replacement. It's not that it's currently unsafe. There has been changes made over recent years as far as the use. There used to be active train access onto the pier, but trains are heavy, so that has been one of the things that has just been eliminated. So yeah, it's deteriorating, but it's not unsafe at this point.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments about this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion and second for approval of the Executive Director's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy. Commissioner
Aye.
Levy, thank you.
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Mimi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call on Vince Coronado to introduce the next agenda item.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. Just another relatively small contract for the PDX Next group. George is here with me. It's for some commissioning for some systems, and we've had this organization do some work for us already, and we're just sort of meeting out the work a little bit at a time, and so we're ready to move on to the next phase of it. This group has already done the Concourse B work for us, and now we're ready to contract for them to move forward on the western expansion and the commissioning of the of some of the systems that we've got going on. So I'll let George walk through the details of it.
Thanks, Vince. Good morning. Next slide, please. So as Vince mentioned, we are asking approval to amend a personal services contract with Burns and Mack to provide construction commissioning services. Just as a quick kind of overview, construction commissioning is basically services to ensure that all the systems we're putting in are designed, installed, operated, maintained in the proper manner, as well as serve as an opportunity to get lead access points or lead points. Next slide. It's kind of the standard slide we'll show in TCOR. I'm going to give you a heads up on what's been happening over the last couple months. We actually came to commission last month for I think a Hoffman-Skanska contract amendment. Since then, we've received permit approval for design package F, which is really the last design package for TCOR. We received the bids on design package F.2, which was the vast majority of work for that. It was probably about $400 million worth of work, predominantly the mechanical, electrical, a lot of our trade partners, drywall, and other works. And we're in a process of evaluating those with the joint venture. Next slide, please. Also, over the last month, we've been finishing the structural and seismic upgrades of the slab at the Oregon market. So last week we can finish the last major pour on that 1956 slab. Next week we'll be kind of finalizing the slab upgrades around the column openings and some of the perimeter spaces. But at that point, we'll be able to transition into the demolition of the Oregon market, which will start before the end of the month. Next slide. Big picture schedule, there's been no changes. We'll be back to commission next month with the guaranteed maximum price contract. We're on schedule right now for completion of the western expansion and the ticket lobby, front half of the ticket lobby in April of 2024, and then a completion of the nodes phased in by the end of 2025. Next slide. I talked about last month, the overall project budget is stressed right now with some of the market conditions and the pricing we're seeing from subcontractors. We anticipate this to not be adequate. We're with their JV to get the final GMP at the end of this month, working with them and try to reduce cost and how do we minimize pricing. We're actually going up to Seattle to meet with Alaska Airlines early next week to talk through the overall project budget and what we think we're going to need going forward. From a small business participation, we'll just focus on this contract. Burns and Mac committed to a 20% small business on the first phase, the work they've done to date with Concourse B and the T-Core design. They're achieving a little over 30%, and it looks like for the next phase in this contract will be about 30% also. Next slide, please. To date, commission has approved in 2019 the Concourse B construction, Concourse B construction, as well as T-Core design support for about $4.1 million. With this amendment of $2.7 million, their contract will be a little over $6.8 million. We're awarding the contract really to get to completion of phase one of the major construction, which is the completion of the western expansion. Anticipate being back to commission in the spring of 2024 with the phase two, which will be the work on the nodes for about $2 million. Next slide. Staff recommend approval of the executive director's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I see we have a question from, sorry, I'm having trouble here. Commissioner O'Halloran.
Yeah. Thank you. Has the overall project budget been increased to reflect current pricing, or have we kept the cap the same? Or I'm just wondering if you reflected, if this current iteration is reflected in the overall project cost.
We have not updated the overall project budget, but we know what we have currently allocated will not be adequate. So we're finalizing those, kind of that pricing, the impact right now, with anticipated coming back to commission next month with what that updated number is, as well as meeting with the airlines to really get their approval on that.
Okay, thank you. I'm assuming our current run rate's gonna blow the cap notably as we move forward. So just preparing ourselves for that.
Yeah, there are some significant headwinds in the market. Not even looking at the price of oil and the impacts those achieved. I think the producer price index from the government for construction input in the last year is a 24% increase. So that's a big increase, and we've got the last bid. If we're really lucky, we have already committed about $1 billion worth of work.
Yeah. So in our bonding capacity, I mean, are we going to need to do additional bonding? Assuming that this additional expense remains in place.
Yeah,
maybe that's an Angelique question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, Antoinette.
Yeah. Commissioner, no problem. Yes, and we already are doing some modeling now and preparing for that. And we also communicated when we went out for the last bond financing to the investor community that we anticipated that there would be additional cost escalations. anywhere between 10 and 15%. So we are doing that analysis and anticipating that there will be additional borrowing.
Yep. Thank you, Antoinette.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate all of that work that I know is happening in the background as conditions change on the ground with respect to the project and the costs of it. Any other questions with respect to this recommendation for the commissioning consulting contract? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for motion and second for approval of the executive director's recommendation.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Cooper-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi, Commissioner Nemi.
She's thumbs up.
Very good. O'Halloran
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call on Dan Pippinger for the next agenda item.
Morning again, Commissioners. This item is to request approval to award a public improvement contract for Runway 25 and Relocation and Slurry Seal project at Troutdale Airport. Really, this project has two kind of components to it. One is to extend the life of the runway pavement and upgrade some runway edge lighting, just some routine asset management work. The second is to displace the end of the runway slightly, which won't have any notable operational impact, but to take a part of the runway out of the, to accommodate the FAA safety zone for the 40-mile loop multi-use path that's being built by others, and you'll maybe remember that from a long time ago through our trip work. But that we need to make sure that that path is outside of the safety area, so we're going to displace the runway slightly in terms of its length. Here to present the item is Eric Forsyth, Engineering Project Manager, to recommend award of the public improvement contract. Go ahead, Eric.
Great, thank you, Dan. Just sound check, can everyone hear me? All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm here today to request award of a public improvement contract to CR Contracting LLC for the Runway 25 and Relocation and Slurry Seal project in the amount of slightly under $625,000. Next slide, please. As Dan alluded to, the project's work is shown here in this map. The runway work is the slurry seal work, along with edge lighting, with some spot pavement repairs, not much there. And then we have the move of the runway 25 end. Essentially, we're removing the displaced threshold and converting it into more blast pad. So we're removing all pavement markings and replacing them in order to get ready for the 40-mile loop trail that's being constructed by others this summer. Next slide, please. Schedule is here as shown. As you can see, it's pretty quick. Luckily, design was able to be compressed quite a bit to make our intended bid date of January 2022, which we did in response to what the industry is typically comfortable with. We intend to begin construction this July. NTP to construction ends is approximately 2 months. And we'll be closing the runway for just a couple of weeks during the center point of that duration. Next slide, please. Budget and funding are here as shown. The public improvement contract being on top, personal services contract, for Century West Engineering includes the alternatives analysis, concept design, final design, bidding, and construction administration support. We also pre-purchased our lighting equipment. So shipments for that have already started to arrive a couple of weeks ago in preparation for construction. We wanted to get a jump on that, so we did. Contingency in this particular case is running at about 13%, which is pretty well aligned with the risk profile of the project, as well as trying to anticipate any variabilities moving into our construction phase here. Port Cost Center is the funding source. Small business enterprise participation was put forth at 8%, and our contractor intends to beat that slightly at 8.06%. Next slide, please. Staff requests approval of the executive director's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Commissioner Alexander.
Yes, can we go back to the budgeting slide for just a quick second?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Eric, I see the small business set aside is set at 8%. Is that 8% of the total project budget or 8% of the construction budget?
It's 8% of construction budget.
Okay. And this is where I can be educated, because again, I may overly simplify this, but that seems to be the greatest opportunity for involvement. I mean, materials and schlepping stuff back and forth. I mean, yeah. It seems a very modest target, and I guess I want to just understand a little bit. I understand the procurement and contracted services and personal services, but it would seem to me that that's an opportunity where we would be able to sort of bring in smaller businesses.
Affirmative. We went through a analysis with our small business group. Kimberly Sutton specifically worked with us to establish this goal based on market conditions, availability, and opportunities given our scope of work. That's how the 8% was contrived, and the contractors promising to beat that goal. So, it's I think in this particular case, the contractor intends to meet that goal through trucking and the pavement repair, which involves just spot pavement removal and replacement along the runway. And in this particular case, the goal will be met through subcontracting through Kodiak Pacific Construction.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope that there's some opportunity for us to be delighted.
Yeah, agree with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion and second to approve the executive director's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Commissioner Alexander, did you have something further?
No,
okay.
I haven't loaded my hand. There we go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Pam, would you lead us through the vote, please?
Yes, Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. I'm going to call on Dan Pippinger again for our last agenda item.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This is another asset management piece of work, this time out at the Hillsborough Airport. and it's to request approval to award a public improvement contract for taxiway Foxtrot and the East Perimeter Road at Hillsborough Airport. The taxiway Foxtrot connects tenants to the airport runway infrastructure, and as noted, the East Perimeter Road provides vehicle connectivity between the east side of the airport and the terminal area. This project would rehabilitate the pavements to provide an additional 5 to 10 years of service while we work on a long-term asset renewal program for these facilities. Here to present the item is Chris Edwards, Engineering Project Manager. Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Dan, and good morning. Next slide. Today I'm requesting approval to award a construction contract to Wilder Standard Paving for the Taxiway F rehabilitation and East Perimeter Road. CO project amount of a little over $660,000. Next slide, please. This shows the overall project work location at Hillsborough Airport. The area shown in red is East Perimeter Road. The work there will be pavement repair, a mill and inlay, as well as sealing it. Area shown in green, that's Taxiway F, and that'll be a 4-inch mill and pave back. Very straightforward. Next slide. This is the overall project schedule. The item bolded on your left is the action item before you today. As you can see, this project will be completed this summer. Next slide. Here's our overall budget and funding. Again, that contract before you today. Our personal services was for the design consultant. Port staff contracted services cover such items as management, inspection, testing, our corporate overhead. Our contingency is 12%, which is appropriate given the complexity of the job. It is funded out of our Port Cost Center. Our goal for small business was 11%, which our contractor has met. Next slide, please. Staff requests approval of the Executive Director's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Levy?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none, I'll call for a motion and second for approval of the Executive Director's recommendation.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask Pam to lead us through the vote.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
and Strader.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Commissioners. That is the end of our agenda. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Hope
you.
to see you in person soon, some of you.
Thank you.
Best wishes, Commissioner McDonald.